In moments like this, you almost have to ask yourself how more than 3 decades of your life can feel like they vanished in just a single evening, slipping away like sand through your fingers before you even notice what's happening. I used to believe I had everything neatly arranged, at least everything that was supposed to matter: a steady marriage, 4 grown children who still called regularly, financial safety, and this deep-rooted bond to my Cypriot heritage that always made me feel special in a way Leo never quite grasped. But feeling special can be dangerous because sometimes it pushes you toward choices that don't announce themselves as life-altering until it's already too late. Anyway, before we dive deeper, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment because it truly helps small creators like me. And trust me, this story gets intense. I'm Marina, 53 years old, married to Leo, 54 now, a man who has spent more than 3 decades working in some technical field that kept our bills paid, but never added any spark to our lives. And after all these years, he still can't have a full conversation in Cypriot Greek. I know that probably sounds cold, but honestly, how do you spend 31 years married to a woman whose culture is everything to her and still barely manage the basics? It's embarrassing, really. Leo has always been accommodating to a fault. One of those, whatever you want, honey, men, especially when it came to choosing restaurants or weekend plans. He'd follow me into every cultural event, every community gathering, every church celebration. And I'd watch him sit there, smiling politely, but looking utterly lost, while my cousins cracked jokes in Greek that he would never understand. He tried, I won't deny him that, but trying and connecting are not the same thing. After so many years of watching him struggle with simple pronunciations, of seeing him nod silently while everyone else vibrated with shared stories, I started feeling this widening gap inside me, a gap where my heritage thrived and he simply couldn't follow. My Cypriot community has always been my refuge. The church feasts, the festivals, the social club dinners, they weren't just events. They were the places where I felt most myself, alive, seen, connected. And Leo tagged along because, well, that's what spouses do. But even from across the room, I could spot that subtle glaze in his eyes, the look of a man enduring rather than participating. I get it, I really do. Being the lone non-Greek person surrounded by rapid dialogue you can't decode must feel isolating. But after 31 years, shouldn't there have been more effort? Shouldn't he have wanted to step into this world more fully? My parents brought our family here when I was little, but they made sure the culture stayed woven into every part of us. Language, food, traditions, all of it. It set me apart, gave me this rich, ancient thread running through everything I did. Leo, on the other hand, bless his heart, married into something he never fully understood. The community social club always hosted these beautiful, lively events. Traditional meals, music, dancing, things that made me feel anchored to who I am. Leo attended them with me, but watching him poke at his pasticcio while others around us erupted in laughter over Greek idioms or old country stories, I won't lie, part of me pitied him. Here was this devoted man who had spent 30 years beside me, and yet he still floated outside the borders of something that shaped my very core. I tried to bridge it for him. I translated, I explained, I encouraged, but after a while, you realize you're dragging someone through a world they never asked to belong to, and maybe never will. So you stop pushing. You stop translating every joke. You stop pausing conversations to include them. And slowly, you both settle into roles you didn't consciously choose. Me, the insider living vibrantly in my identity, him, the perpetual guest just passing through. The latest club function was supposed to be ordinary. Just another night of me weaving between tables and Leo following loyally behind. But the club had hired a photographer that evening, someone named Stefan, who seemed to know half the older members from way back. I didn't expect anything unusual. I thought Leo and I would do our usual routine. Sit, smile, nod, translate, leave. But Stefan sat next to me at the dinner table, and something shifted. He greeted me instantly in fluent Greek Cypriot dialect, rich and familiar, the kind that wraps around you like a warm shawl. He laughed at the right references, responded to subtle cultural cues I didn't have to explain. He belonged. And for the first time in years, I felt the intoxicating relief of not needing to simplify myself so someone else could follow along. Stefan knew the community histories, the family branches, the little unspoken dynamics. With him, I didn't have to pause, backtrack, or translate. Everything flowed. Meanwhile, Leo sat beside us, awkwardly trying to interject, asking what we were saying, requesting small explanations that kept breaking the rhythm of the conversation. But how do you explain decades of shared cultural memory to someone who only knows the surface? The more Stefan and I talked, the hungrier I felt for the connection I'd been missing. Starving for it, really. And that hunger, that feeling of finally being mirrored, was where everything began to unravel in ways I couldn't yet see. Everything that night felt charged, like the air itself had thickened around us. Stefan and I slipped into deeper conversation. Community politics, old world customs, family migrations, topics that never found room to breathe in my marriage with Leo. The man beside me at the table felt like a stranger by comparison, nodding along as if nodding could somehow manufacture belonging. I kept answering Leo with shorter phrases, hoping he'd sense the rhythm I didn't want interrupted. But he leaned in more, asking what we meant, like a man trying to grab handfuls of water. When the music started, those familiar chords that make every Greek heart beat a little faster, Stefan extended his hand, and without hesitation, I took it. Dancing with him felt natural, effortless, like falling into a memory I never lived but somehow remembered. Leo watched from the table, his expression a mix of confusion and something darker. Still, in that moment, I didn't care. I felt a kind of cultural ease I hadn't felt in years. When Stefan and I slipped the bar afterward, he ordered traditional spirits without needing a menu, offering the proper toasts, laughing at subtle references. I realized, not without guilt, that I wasn't thinking about whether Leo felt left out. I wasn't scanning the room to check if he needed translation. I was simply existing. When Leo approached and asked when we were leaving, his tone already tight around the edges. Irritation sparked in me. I told him 15 minutes, brushing it off. But then Stefan mentioned the after-party at the club president's house, a quiet, exclusive gathering reserved for community insiders, and something inside me clicked. This was the kind of intimate cultural circle I'd always hovered near but never fully entered. A doorway into belonging. When I stepped outside to breathe, the choice settled itself in my chest. I went back in, but Leo had vanished. I tried calling once, but my phone glitched. I assumed he had stepped out or gone home early. He had done that before, and the after-party was starting. So when Stefan offered me a ride, I accepted without hesitation. The gathering was everything I'd imagined. Deep conversations, shared memories, plans for community projects. No need for translation, no need for compromise, no need to slow myself down. Hours slipped by like seconds. Each moment felt like reclaiming a part of myself I'd long buried under marital obligations. When we finally left around dawn, Stefan walked me to the car, and the soft goodbye kiss on my cheek felt traditional, harmless, familiar. I truly believed everything was fine. But when I entered my apartment, Leo stood on the balcony, trembling with anger. "Where have you been?" His voice cracked, not loud, but raw. I tried explaining about the after party, about the conversations, about the cultural significance, but he fixated on the hours, the unanswered calls, Stefan. His voice rose as he said, "You left with another man. You came home at 5:30 in the morning. How am I supposed to interpret that?" His jealousy infuriated me. After all these years of cultural disconnect, he wanted to make this about suspicion instead of the truth that I had finally experienced the connection I'd been suffocating without. We argued, harsh, sharp words cutting deeper than either of us intended, until finally he whispered, "I'm leaving. I need space." And for reasons I didn't understand then, I didn't chase him. I simply watched him pack. The days after Leo left carried an eerie quiet. I expected him to cool down, expected things to settle, but instead he cut off contact completely. The kids, usually so warm, became strangely distant when I tried explaining. Even my most sympathetic son, Elias, hesitated. "Mom, disappearing all night? Leaving with another man? That's not cultural networking," he said softly. The accusation stung deeper than Leo's had. And then the divorce papers came. Abandonment of marital duties. Irreconcilable differences. My hands shook reading them. How could an evening of belonging, finally feeling like part of something, turn into the unraveling of a 31-year marriage? The Greek community reacted faster than I expected. Whispers turned into distance, invitations dried up. People were polite but careful, not wanting to stand too close to scandal. Even Stefan, who had been so vibrant that night, suddenly grew cold. He stopped returning my messages, answering with short apologies about not wanting to get involved. It dawned on me then, I had mistook warmth for connection. A single night for a new chapter, cultural familiarity for personal loyalty, and I miscalculated everything. During the divorce hearings, Leo's lawyer painted a story that made me sound reckless, unfaithful, unhinged. My own lawyer looked at me with raised brows as she asked, "You didn't call him once? Not once? You left in another man's car and returned at sunrise?" The truth sounded worse when spoken aloud. My children avoided anything deeper than logistics. Phone calls turned formal, holidays became lopsided, more time with their father, the steady parent, the stable one. And slowly, painfully, I realized the thing I never expected. The community I believed I belonged to valued consistency more than authenticity. They admired Leo's decades of quiet participation more than my lifetime of cultural pride. The divorce finalized 8 months later. Leo kept the house, Judge the more stable resident. I found a small apartment across town, decorated it meticulously with Cypriot art, icons, pottery, textiles, a perfect cultural sanctuary, and yet profoundly empty. 2 years passed before I saw Leo in person again. I ran into him at a grocery store, me alone, him with a woman about our age. She wasn't Greek, not even trying to be, and yet she looked comfortable beside him, her hand lightly hooked around his arm. He looked relaxed, lighter than I'd remembered. He smiled at me gently, kindly even. "Marina," he said, "how have you been?" His new partner gave me a warm nod, not threatened, not tense, just quietly present. Watching them together hit me harder than I expected. This was Leo untethered from the silent pressure to belong to a world he never fully understood. He looked free, and I, standing there with my cart of groceries and a tight smile, felt the sting of realization. I had spent years wanting him to transform into someone he wasn't, wanting him to share a culture he admired but never embodied, wanting him to fit into a space carved by generations he wasn't born into, and he had spent those same years waiting for me to notice that he loved me even from the periphery. After they walked away, I stood alone in the cereal aisle, gripping the cart handle until my knuckles whitened. My apartment, though rich with culture, felt suddenly like a shrine to something I'd chased too hard. I still attended community events occasionally, but I was no longer central, no longer someone people sought out. I was the woman who left her husband for a night of cultural intoxication, the woman who misread belonging, the woman who burned her own bridge and called it heritage. And the silence I'd once mistaken for freedom now echoed with everything I lost. I didn't fully grasp how much the past still held me in its grip until the church's annual cultural festival came around again, 3 years after everything fell apart. I almost didn't go. I told myself it would be uncomfortable, that people would stare, that the whispers would start up again like old engines sputtering back to life. But something in me insisted. Maybe it was longing, maybe habit, maybe the stubborn belief that I couldn't hide forever from a community I had once poured myself into so completely. So I went. I wore a modest dress, simple jewelry, kept my hair pinned back. I wanted to blend in, not stand out. When I walked through the gate, the familiar sounds hit me first. The mandolin chords tuning up, the distant clatter of metal trays in the food tent, elders shouting greetings across the courtyard. It should have felt comforting. Instead, I felt like I was passing through the home of a family I used to belong to, but no longer had the right to claim. A few people nodded politely. 1 or 2 smiled with that overly careful expression, the kind reserved for unstable ground, friendly but from a distance. I could almost hear their thoughts. There she is, the woman who chased belonging so hard she lost everything else. I forced my shoulders back and moved toward the coffee stand, keeping my gaze down, pretending not to notice the subtle shifts in posture whenever someone recognized me. I tried to focus on the pastries lined up neatly, the smell of cinnamon and orange zest, the comfort of tradition. But the weight of eyes pressed in from all sides. As I stood in line, I heard a soft, hesitant "Marina?" The voice was small, cautious, and painfully familiar. I turned. It was Anna, the daughter of one of the older community families. She had always been kind, always gentle, never one to join in gossip. She stepped closer, offering an awkward but sincere hug. "I'm glad you came," she said, and for a moment, a flicker of warmth touched the edges of my chest. But before I could respond, she added softly, "People don't understand everything. They never really asked. They just filled in the blanks." Her eyes held pity. That stung. I thanked her anyway. After she left, I moved through the festival like a ghost. Children danced in the center courtyard, clapping their hands in rhythm. The elders sat under the shade tents discussing politics and grandchildren. Young couples wandered hand in hand, stopping for lukumatas and photos. Everything looked exactly as it had always had, and completely different at the same time. I stopped near the back of the tent where the music group was setting up. When the first song played, one of the old village ballads, I felt something sharp twist inside me. I had once danced to this very song with Leo during our 2nd year of marriage, when he still tried so hard to understand our traditions, even if he couldn't fully embrace them. I remembered the way he smiled nervously, always 1 beat behind, always watching my feet so he wouldn't ruin the steps. That memory, small, quiet, but precious, hit me harder than I expected. He tried, I realized. I didn't see how much he tried. My throat tightened. I stepped away, searching for space to breathe. But as I moved toward the exit, I heard another voice call my name. This one lower, firmer, older. I turned slowly. It was Father Nikolaus, the priest who had known me since childhood, the man who officiated my wedding, baptized all my children, and had seen the entire arc of my life unfold within these walls. He approached with that gentle, measured stride of his, hands tucked behind his back, expression unreadable but kind. "Marina," he said, offering a nod. "It has been some time." I greeted him politely, bracing for reprimand or moral instruction. Instead, he surprised me. "You look quieter than I remember." The words were simple, but they pierced straight through me. "Life has a way of humbling us," I said, attempting a half smile. "Yes," he replied softly, "but humility is not humiliation. The two are often confused." He paused, studying me with the care of someone who had watched many lives unfold and unravel and rebuild again. "You were always spirited, passionate, driven by feeling and heritage, but passion without anchor can be swept by the wind." His gaze was steady, but not condemning. "You lost your balance for a moment. It happens, to all of us." I dropped my eyes to the ground. For the first time in years, I felt tears gather, not from guilt or anger, but from the simple shock of being spoken to with understanding instead of judgment. "You made mistakes," he said plainly, but kindly. "So did your husband. So do your children. So does every soul walking through this festival today." He gestured lightly toward the courtyard, the crowds, the chatter. "This community is not perfect. It can be harsh, narrow, frightened of scandal. But it is also capable of mercy, if given time." I swallowed hard. "Do you think they'll ever see me the same again?" He smiled small and sad. "No, they will not. But perhaps they may come to see you truthfully." It was an answer both painful and strangely liberating. He rested a hand briefly on my arm. "You are not exiled, Marina, only wounded. And wounds heal slowly." After Father Nikolaus walked away, I stood frozen in place, unsure what to do with the sudden rush of emotions rising inside me. His words lingered. Not exiled, only wounded. I wasn't sure if I believed him, but the gentle sincerity in his voice had cracked something open in me, something I had kept sealed tight for years. I wandered to the edge of the festival where the noise softened into a distant hum and the smell of grilled lamb faded into the breeze. I found an empty bench under the fig tree, the same one where my children used to sit with their little paper cups of lemonade during summer festivals. The memory of their sticky faces and wide grins washed over me, warm at first, then sharp. They had grown distant since the divorce. Not cruelly, just cautiously, politely, like children trying not to disturb an injured animal. They visited on holidays. They kept conversations surface level. They asked about my health, my job, my apartment, but never about my feelings, my regrets, or my memories. I wasn't sure if they still blamed me outright or if they were simply afraid of reopening wounds. Maybe both. Sitting under that old fig tree, I felt the weight of every unspoken conversation between us. I had lost more than a marriage. I had lost the invisible threads that held my family close. Not snapped, but frayed, fragile, easily broken. I didn't know how to mend them. I closed my eyes, letting the music drift faintly through the air. Another old folk song began, melancholy, slow, one of the ones my mother used to hum while braiding my hair. I felt a tear slide down my cheek before I could stop it. I wiped it away quickly, hoping no one had noticed. But then a voice behind me said, softly, "Are you all right?" I turned. It was someone I hadn't expected to see at all. Elena, one of the women who used to dance with me in the church troupe. Years ago, we were close. We practiced late into the evenings, laughing when we missed steps, sharing gossip between rehearsals. But after everything happened, she had pulled away like most others, not cruelly, just following the tide. She sat down beside me without asking, smoothing her skirt over her knees. "It's been a long time," she said. "Yes," I replied quietly. "It has." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't heavy, just unfamiliar. Finally, she inhaled slowly, as if gathering courage. "I want to say something, and I hope you can hear it in the spirit I mean it." I nodded, bracing myself. She hesitated again. That night, the night of the celebration, people talked a lot. I looked away. She continued, soft but steady. Some of it was exaggerated, some of it wasn't. But people don't always understand how loneliness can cloud judgment, or how a moment of feeling seen can overwhelm common sense. I felt my stomach twist, but I let her speak. "I'm not excusing anything," she added quickly, "but I also never believed you did anything unforgivable." Her voice trembled slightly. "I just thought you were hurting in ways no one else could see, and maybe you reached for the wrong comfort." I blinked hard, surprised by the sting behind my eyes. "Then why didn't you say something?" I whispered. Her shoulders slumped. "Because I was afraid. Afraid of choosing the wrong side. Afraid of being dragged into drama. Afraid of looking disloyal." She paused. "Sometimes silence isn't judgment. It's cowardice." The honesty in her voice startled me. For the first time in years, I saw her not as one of the people who abandoned me, but as someone caught in the same messy web of community expectations, fear of gossip, and cultural politics. "I'm sorry for not reaching out," she said. "Truly." I let the words sink in. They didn't erase the past, but they softened something hard inside me. "Thank you," I said quietly. "That means more than you know." We sat together for several minutes, two women who once danced in perfect synchrony, now learning how to navigate the awkward steps of reconnection. When she finally stood to leave, she placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You should come to the women's brunch next month. No pressure, just consider it." I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I meant it. After she walked away, I leaned back against the bench and took a shaky breath. Something inside me felt different. Still heavy, but shifting. Maybe Father Nicolaus was right. Maybe I wasn't exiled, just hurt, and maybe wounds really could heal. Slowly, unevenly, imperfectly. As the afternoon sun began to dip behind the church roof, casting long shadows over the courtyard, I realized something. I wasn't as alone as I believed. I had isolated myself out of shame, out of fear, out of a belief that everyone saw me as the community cautionary tale. But perhaps I had never given them the chance to see anything else. Perhaps I had frozen myself in the version of me I feared they remembered. And perhaps it was time to thaw. I stood from the bench and walked back toward the festival, not to reclaim my place, not to make a statement, but simply to exist. Not as the woman who made a terrible mistake, not as the symbol of scandal, but as a person still learning, still hurting, still breathing. As I blended quietly into the crowd, the music swelled again, uplifting this time, bright, full of life. And for the first time in years, I felt even the faintest flicker of something I thought I had lost forever. Hope.